Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Hallelujah. What a Sabbath today is. It's the seventh day, by the way, everybody. So it's Yahweh's commanded day. Hey, let's just go over to, where's my scriptures at? Here they are. Let's go over here to Exodus chapter 20.
20?
Yeah, the commandments.
No, Exodus chapter 20.
Exodus chapter 20.
The commandments.
Verse 8, remember the Sabbath day, HaShabbat, to keep it holy. Kodesh, 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath, HaShabbat, of Yahweh your Elohim. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea, and all things that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So that's what we're doing. We are seeking to honor and glorify Yahweh. That is the fourth commandment, isn't it? Yep. Fourth commandment. Everybody, I'm Jerry Heelan with Yahweh's Evangelical Assembly. We publish Yahweh's Yahshua's Witness magazine, the YEA newsletter, and Search the Scriptures publication. Everything that we publish is free. We don't want to charge anything for it. The reason being, Yahshua said, freely you have received, freely give. So that's what we try to live up to. So it's a blessing to be able to serve others. It's a blessing for us to be here today. Our mailing address is Post Office Box 31, Atlanta, Texas, 75551. Got a website, which is at yea777.org. I do need to update it. We'll get to that here shortly, hopefully maybe this week sometime. We are in the process of, got our next newsletter ready to go. And our copy machine broke down on us. So we've got to wait until we get the parts to repair it before we get it out. You can call us at 903-826-1804. That's my cell phone number, or 903-796-7420. Brethren, let's take our hymnals and let's go before Yahweh and let's sing praises unto him. So let's sing song number 1 in our song hymnal, page 4, As the Deer Panteth. Yeah. Follow here. As the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after you. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You alone are my strength, my shield. You alone make my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. I want you more than gold and silver, only you can satisfy. You alone are the real joy giver and the apple of my eye. You alone are my strength, my shield. You alone make my spirit yield. You alone desire and I long to worship you. You're my friend and you are my Father, even though you are my King. I love you more than any other, so much more than anything. You alone are my strength, my shield. You alone make my spirit breathe. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. Let's get this taken. I think we got a little bit of glare on the board. There we go. That's a little bit better, maybe. Hopefully. Okay, brethren, let's just keep on singing here. As you sow, so shall you reap. We have some of our attendees just now coming in. Sorry about that. That's one of the reasons why we held up a little bit. These two were late.
Sorry about that. I had it off.
Radio?
My telephone. Hit my radio.
Okay, let's do song number 2. As you sow, so shall you reap. If you sow to the Spirit, of the Spirit you'll reap life. If you sow to the flesh, you shall reap sorrow. If you sow to the Spirit, of the Spirit you'll reap life. For as you sow, so shall you reap. Stand fast in the liberty our Messiah has made us free. Stand fast in the liberty our Messiah has made us free. And be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Stand fast in the liberty our Messiah has made us free. If you sow to the Spirit, of the Spirit you reap life. If you sow to the flesh, you shall reap sorrow. If you sow to the Spirit, of the Spirit you reap life. For as you sow, so shall you reap. Stand fast in the liberty our Messiah has made us free. Stand fast in the liberty our Messiah has made us free. And be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Stand fast in the liberty our Messiah has made us free. Okay, number 3, we're going to Awake, O Israel. Hopefully, we've all been able to wake up today.
Yeah.
At a good time. I mean, I actually got up a little bit late this morning. I got up at 4 o'clock, and usually on the Sabbath, I like to get up around 3 o'clock in the morning so I can get all my studying and everything done, get my message put together. But I was a little bit late today. Of course, I've been working on the message for the last couple of days anyhow. So anyway, let's sing Awake, O Israel. Awake, O Israel, put off your slumber, and the truth shall make you you free, for out of Zion comes your deliverer in the year of Jubilee. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise Yahweh, for out of Zion comes your deliverer in the year of Jubilee. Thou art my chosen, for thou hast sought me, thou art graven on my hand, and I will gather all those who gather, they will possess the land. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise Yahweh, for out of Zion comes your deliverer in the year of Jubilee. For from the darkness of affliction I have chosen thee, behold, and for your iron I'll give you silver, for your brass I'll give you gold. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise Yahweh, for out of Zion comes your deliverer in the year of Jubilee. Awake, O Israel, put off your slumber, and the truth shall make you free. For out of Zion comes your deliverer in the year of Jubilee. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise Yahweh, for out of Zion comes your deliverer in the year of Jubilee. Hey, hallelujah. Yeah. Awesome, meaningful song, because we know that Joshua's going to return, and he is going to return. I'm positive he's going to return in a Jubilee year to set his people free. That's what Jubilee, what Jubilee is for. 50th year of liberty. 50 is the number for liberty, Jubilee. And by the way, it's the noon, and the noon has to do with an heir, a child or an heir, the seed. Hallelujah. Okay, so let's go on to number 4, a new commandment.
Tell me that's all right.
He said hi.
I got it right.
A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you love one another as I have loved you. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you love one another as I have loved you. disciples if you have love one to another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. Now, brethren, stop and think about this. Greater love has no man than he laid down his life for his friends. But Joshua had even greater love because he laid down his life for his enemies too, right?
Yep.
How many of us have that love? That's a question we need to ask. Are we willing to lay our lives down for others? Good question, right? I think in too many cases we, pardon me, we hold our lives so dear that that we wouldn't even think about dying for somebody else. But Joshua set the example for us, and we need to be following his example, which is difficult, I know. But after all, he is the Savior and the Redeemer, right?
Hallelujah.
But he set that example for us, and that is the type of love that we need to start struggling and working towards, praying about, that we have the love that Yahweh has for us. And you know, brethren, that's this kind of goes in with the message I gave last Sabbath on abortion. What kind of people are willing to even destroy their own children? There is no love left if you're willing to destroy your own children. I mean, we're supposed to be, even the animals, the females of the animals especially, will fight off anything to preserve their seed and put their lives in danger for it, right? We've lost something in this world. And that something we've lost is even the natural love that we should have one for another. Okay, let's do beauty for ashes. He gives me beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that we might be trees of righteousness, the planting of Yahweh, that He might be glorified. It's me, beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that we might be trees of righteousness, the planting of Yahweh, that He might be glorified. Gives me beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that we might be trees of righteousness, the planting of Yahweh, that He might be glorified. Hallelujah. Ben, we got quite a few people to pray for today. We've had a couple of them that we took off the prayer list, but then we've got a couple that we've added. And the first one that I want to address is our other elder, Johnny McCarty. He's had the flu twice this year. He just got over it. The first part of this week, he went to work on the Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it's Tuesday. Then yesterday, sick again. Third time.
Wow.
So he said that he sent me a text and said he wouldn't be here today. He was he'd gone out to eat lunch, and then he upchucked everything. And the next thing he did, he started coming down with fever and sinus headache and just overall miserable. So anyway, we certainly want to remember him. Mike and Ginger Williams, along with you didn't put those children on here. Oh, where are they at?
Down below.
Well, I wanted them in there with Mike and Ginger. Harlan,
Eden Hall and Hayden Elizabeth.
Harlan, Engel. That sounds right. And Hayden Elizabeth.
No, honey. It's Eden Paul.
Eden Paul and Hayden Elizabeth. Okay, Eden Paul. Well, you don't have it here that way. You got Harlan Engel. Oh, that's a different person, I guess. This is my wife. Where? Oh, Eden Paul and Hayden Elizabeth. Okay. Well, we need to put them up with Mike and Ginger because they're the family now.
Okay.
Right.
And Mike's mother, Judy Pyle, Jerry Osborne with his
Problems.
continuing problems, Alan Kirk,
Always like him.
David and Lexi and Bray, David, Lexi Harris and Bray Beatty. And let's see, that's Don Jeffrey's name on here.
Oh my God.
What?
Oh, no way. Sorry about that.
Yelkel Zwolinski,
Praise God.
Erna Aquino. Now, okay, Harlan Engel. Yeah, he's the one he's the little baby, 2-year-old baby that has a hole in his heart. Jasmine Branch. I ought to remember also her sister JC, although I'm hoping that JC's doing okay. Chris and Emily Hetland. Joseph Miller. Joseph Miller's in prison up in Ohio. And brethren, you know, they've gotten to the point to where they don't recognize us as a viable work, our group, our way. And so he can't even hardly have a Bible study with anybody. He can kind of have a Bible open and two men can be talking about the Bible a little bit, but if they think that he's teaching anybody, then they can come and take him and put him in the brick in the hole. It's pretty serious, and they requested a lot of us elders to contact the overall chaplain there. I can't remember his name, Mike something or another. But anyway, I need to do that. I just did our fundamentals of faith, redid our fundamentals of faith, and I'll be posting them in the next magazine probably. But I wanted to wait until I got those fundamentals of faith done up before I wrote him a letter. And Joseph's mother, Barbara Deerwester, and her husband, Gary. Gary's really having a tough time. He's really down. And, you know, brethren, I know how it is. I know how we get down when we're afflicted. We really do. And he really is down. He's down and out, but we just need to pray that Yahweh will encourage him because, you know, brethren, we have an Elohim who has the power of life. And even though, as Job himself said, even though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Now that's the faith. That is a faith. We need that faith. Matt and Michelle Cox, you know, they're still having problems with the loss of Chloe. Of course, they had about $1.5 million of hospital expenses and all. And they're not millionaires either, by the way.
Nobody did a GoFundMe page for them?
Huh?
Nobody did a GoFundMe page?
Oh, yeah.
I think they did, but it's hard to get somebody to donate $1 million.
Well, I love somebody.
Yeah, I know.
Billions of people in the world.
Yeah. Courtney Foster. Courtney is their daughter, and she just has a problem with migraine headaches continually. It's awful. Rachel Gibson, that's our other daughter. She's been having she's got peripheral neuropathy, and her feet just kill her, and she really needs our prayers. Clara Gibson also, that's our granddaughter, Clara. She's been having a cold and cough and everything. Shirley Sandquist. Somehow or another, we got Susan Sandquist written on here. Well, I don't know if Susan might need some prayers too, but Shirley Sandquist, that's Eric Sandquist, mother. Brian Anderson, he's got a medley of problems. Got a broke down truck for one thing. And diabetic problems. Robert Kirk. Robert's had kind of like flu-like problems for about a week or so. I haven't heard from him lately how he's doing. I hope he's doing all right. Teddy Wilson and the group that he has with him up in Idaho. And we got a new person here, Jaquetta Curry. She is a sweet lady. We met her years ago at a feast. She was at one of our feasts, and that gal, don't ever talk to her very often at all, but I guarantee you when you get on the phone with her, you can't hardly get off. She is a firecracker when she gets on that phone and starts talking.
She has COPD.
Yeah, she's suffering from COPD, and she's got some really bad problems right now. Savannah Teague. Regina Cole. Who's that?
She has cancer. Friend of Teresa's.
Okay, one of Teresa, our daughter Teresa's friends, Regina Cole. And then my wife Frances, she's been having some problems too. So, brethren, let's go before Yahweh and ask his blessings upon us this day. Father in heaven, Yahweh, thank you so much for this Shabbat, this Sabbath day. It is such a blessing to be able to know of your commandments, especially your commanded day of convocation, and that you, Father in heaven, you bless your people, those who walk in your ways. You love those people who keep your Sabbath day. Now, if we don't walk in your ways and we're keeping your Sabbath days, that just goes for nothing. But Father in heaven, you've called us out of this world, and you've taught us to walk according to your will, your purposes, your ways, your commandments. And so the Sabbath is so meaningful to us because, Father, it teaches us not only of things past, but things present and things future. And so we thank you for that, and we praise you for that. And Father in heaven, you know, we named off a list of names here of people who are suffering from illnesses, from all kinds of specific afflictions. And we're just lifting them before your great throne of grace, mercy, and truth to seek, Father in heaven, your intervention for them in their lives, that you will intervene, that you'll bless them, that you'll lift them up, that you'll remove, that you'll rebuke the afflictions that they're suffering from, so that they will be able to live and move and walk and rejoice, Father in heaven, in your awesome, marvelous, and wondrous name. And Father in heaven, we certainly ask you to be with us this day as we go through the message. There's so much confusion in this world. And Father in heaven, that we do live in Babylon. And I'm not saying that America is the great Babylon. The whole world is in Babylon. The whole world is confused, Father. And so we're just asking you to be with us this day to teach us as humble little children, Father in heaven, so that, we can know your word, we can know your truth, and we can follow your word and your truth. And Father in heaven, honor and glorify and praise you. And so we commit all things into your capable hands. We're asking you to send Yahshua to be not only among us here, but wherever people are that are watching this video today, that you will bless each one of us, that you'll put your spirit in our heart, and that you'll send Yahshua to be with each one of us, to be with the speaking and the receiving of that which is spoken, so that we can be taught, we can be instructed in your ways of truth. And we give you the thanks and praise for these things, Father, and ask your blessings this day, thanking you so much in the name of the one who makes it possible. That is your awesome Son, who is our heavenly high priest after the order of Melchizedek, Yahshua HaMashiach. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Well, brethren, that's what we live in today. We live in a world that is so confused. A world is so chaotic. And I had a sister contact me the other day and asked me to explain to her this Zadok Enochian or Enochian Zadok calendar. And I hadn't really looked into it all that much, but brethren, I tell you, if you want to know what a counterfeit is, then what you need to do is you need to be handling that which is real. Bank tellers can pretty much tell the difference between a counterfeit bill and a real bill just by handling them, feeling them, looking at them, because they handle that which is real all the time. And so when a counterfeit bill comes up in front of them, they can readily identify it as counterfeit far, far quicker than you or I can. And that's the way it has to be with the calendar. With Yahweh's word, it has to be that way with Yahweh's word, brethren. We have to handle his word. We have to be familiar with his word so that when something comes along that is kind of out of kilter, we don't fall for it. And that's one of the problems that we have. We've had people who have been teaching a lunar Sabbath cycle. But the problem is, if you go by a lunar Sabbath cycle, they use the first day of the month as a Sabbath. And that's impossible because Sabbath, the word Sabbath comes from the number 7, Shabbat. And so the Sabbath and the number 7 they're tied together perfectly, so that you have to have 6 days preceding the 7th-day Sabbath. They don't take that into account. They appoint the first day as a Sabbath. Some people do, others don't. Because we do live in Babylon, you've got people who do the lunar calendar who will count from day 1 as into day 7 and say that's the Sabbath. But most of them say the first day is the day of the new moon is a Sabbath, and then the second day is the first day. Well, that's lunacy. Lunar, lunatic, lunacy. They're moonstruck, because when you count, you can get 4 perfect Sabbaths out of a lunar cycle, 29 and a half days, but you're either going to have 1 or 2 days extra. 1 month, you'll have 1 day extra. The next month, you'll have 2 days extra. They call those days of the sun or non-days. They call them non-days. How can you have a non-day? So then we've got these people that come up with this, Enochian Zadok calendar. And I don't know if you can read this all that well or not, but this is Zadok Enochian calendar resources. They say the resources is the Torah, the book of Enoch, Enoch 1, and Jubilees. And of course, some scrolls that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I need to set this thing in here. So that's their resources. But my resources are the Torah. Now, I don't use the book of Enoch, and I don't use the book of Jubilees, and I don't use the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls either. Why? Well, basically, they're not available to me, but anyway, I've got the scriptures. I've got the Hebrew text of the scriptures, and I've got the English version of the scriptures, and I've got the Greek version of the scriptures. So as far as I'm concerned, that's all I need. If I need anything extra, then I may have to go outside, such as sometimes you have to go to those who, such as the Jews, Paul writes that the oracles of Yahweh were given to the Jews, and that's the Old Testament. So they have the oracles, and we wouldn't know what to look for unless we looked at their records where they were writing that they looked for the crescent moon. Every crescent moon, the new moon, was the new moon. Today, even they themselves, because of Hillel in the 4th century, in the 4th century, established, instead of the crescent moon, he established the conjunction as the new moon. Well, man just can't arbitrarily assign those things. He can, but when you do, you're in error, because the records that, if you go back to the temple records and everything, the records that the Jews themselves have, they admit that they were looking for the crescent moon. Okay. So now they're saying the calendar of Enoch and the calendar of Zadok are both solar calendars. Well, guess what? Our calendar, civil calendar from Julius and Augustus Caesar and Pope Gregory, is a solar calendar also, isn't it? Each year is 364 days. A base year is 360 days. How do they get that? Well, a prophetic year is 360 days. A prophetic year. The use of 4 intercalary days, and I'm going to show that to you. Feast and Sabbaths are established on predetermined days each year. Calculated septenary based on the number 7. Primary differences on Enoch and Zadok calendars is the Zadok is based on the Dead Sea Scrolls. There is never shifting of weekdays. The 7th-day Sabbath never shifts from year to year. The 7-day creation week given in Torah remains foundational. The cycle of working 6 days and resting every 7th is unbroken and unchanging. The modern 7th-day Saturday is the Sabbath. No denial of a 365 literal solar year as determined by the vernal spring equinox. So they start their year every year with the vernal equinox. But look, okay, I might have to hold this up a little bit closer for you to be able to see it here. I want you to, hello, Spider. This here now, okay. This is the winter solstice, and it's got a number 1 here, and then you got 30, 30, and 30. 3 30-day months. And then this is the vernal equinox. You got a 1 here, and then 30, 30, and 30 for 3 30-day months. And then this is the summer solstice. It's got a 1 on it. And then 30, 30, and 30. And then a autumn equinox, got a 1 here. And then 30, 30, and 30. So the one for each one of the equinoxes and the solstices is the 4 days that they intercalate into their calendar. They have to, because that's where it is. And then they've got perfect 30-day months all around here. Huh? What happened? What?
Months that have 31 days.
They don't have 31-day months. See, this is 30, 60, 90. Well, that's 180 plus 180. That's 360 plus the 4 days. The 4 days, that's 364.
What did
They
what did they do about
They
the
robbed
leap
those
year?
days from
Like,
February and added it
February,
into
28
their
days.
name days like Caesar.
Leap year?
Julio Caesar.
And every
June,
4 years
July.
is a leap
So
year.
they took that down. and
Another
put it
day,
on
that's
there.
an extra day.
Yeah, there
30
has
days.
to be adjustment, because you're always going to get a little
They
bit
don't
out
go
of
by that,
kilter.
do they?
Okay, brethren. So they've also got a Zadok checksum test for Passover, which we're going to get into that later. But let's go over here to the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 12. Now this is the first verse in Hebrew of Exodus chapter 12. And it says, and he says, Yahweh, to Moshe and to Aaron in Eretz, in the land of Egypt, to say. And so you read here in Exodus 12, verse 1 in my scriptures, it says, and Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, all right, verse 2. Ha-Hodesh, the moon or month. The moon or month be this moon or this month to you, Rosh is the head. It's the head Hodeshim. It's the head of the Hodeshim. It's the head of the moons, the head of the months. Rishon. It's the first. Rishon. It's the head of the months. It is the first. He's the first to you.
First of the year.
Yeah, the first of the year. So it says here in my scriptures, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. The first month. What does he say? What is Hodesh?
Holy.
Kodesh?
Huh?
Is that a part?
Kodesh. No, not Kodesh. Kodesh.
With H.
Moon.
Holy.
Moon.
No.
It's actually a het. Het Dalet Shin.
It's actually a moon.
It's actually a moon or month. The moon or month. Actually, when you get right down to it, the Hebrew word for month and moon is the same word. It's the same word.
Is it spelled the same?
Huh?
Is it spelled the same? There was a Q.
Kodesh, yeah.
Okay.
It's not with the code. It's the het.
It's not H.
Het, like the CH.
Okay.
Chodesh.
Chodesh.
Yeah, Chodesh. So he says, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months or moons. This moon shall be unto you. It's the head moon. It's the first moon of the year to you. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 10th day. Okay. So now he's saying, speak to the whole congregation of Israel, and he's telling them to take in this month, this Hodesh, he's telling them this month they take a lamb. Speak to the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And so he's telling them here to take this lamb in the 10th day of the month. And here it is, once again, this month or this moon, the 10th day of this month of this moon. Now, a lot of people say that Chodesh means new moon, but it doesn't mean new moon because you got the 10th day. Here it is. Here's your 10th. In the 10th of the moon of the month, they're to take a lamb.
Does it start with the crescent moon?
Yeah.
Everything starts with the crescent.
Right. So he says, and if the house be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Let me get these. Let me get these out here. Okay. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 4 and 10. Now, here's what he says. He says, keep it. You keep it in this moon. Here is the Hebrew word for moon here, and here is the well, this is when they kill it. They keep it until the 4 and 10th. The 4 and 10th day. Here's the 4 and 10th day of the month of the moon, and then they're going to kill it, and they're going to kill it in Ben Ha-Arbaim. Ben Ha-Arbaim. That is a time. That is a specific time. In the English, it just says they shall kill it in the evening. But the term is Ben Ha-Arbaim. And you shall take the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and the upper doorpost of the houses, wherein they shall eat it, and they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden it all with water, but roast with fire his head and his legs with the impertinence thereof. And you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remains of it until the morning you shall burn with fire. And thus shall you eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against the Elohim of Egypt will I execute judgment. I am Yahweh. And the blood shall be for you, to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague will not come upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast unto Yahweh throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation. You shall do no manner of work. Holy convocation to you, no manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. And you shall observe the feast of matzah. Now, the interesting thing, and I didn't outline this, but matzah, when I looked at matzah, it's mem, tzadi, hey. So mem has to do with water, spirit. Tzadi has to do with, if you go and you look into the Hebrew alphabet, tzadi has to do with righteousness, and hey has to do with revealed. Matzah. So the spiritual righteous one is revealed. He's revealed in that unleavened bread. And the reason why is because leaven typifies sin. Unleavened, something that has no leaven in it, is without sin. And so the matzah, the unleavened bread, typifies Yahshua the Messiah, who was to his body was to be broken for us, and we are to eat of his body. So that's the reason why we eat unleavened bread for 7 days, because 7 is the number for spiritual perfection and completion. You know, Yahweh, in the beginning, he established the 6-day week that he worked, and on the 7th day he rested, didn't he? And he set it aside as to be Kodesh, to be a blessing. And so the 7th day is for blessing, and the 7th day is for cleanness, purity, Kodeshness, holiness. And it is the 7th day. The 7th day. So we have 7 days that typify Yahshua, who is your complete spiritual perfection. He is the one who can totally and completely unleaven you. And that's what, brethren, that's what these days represent Yahshua the Messiah. So people want to come up with all of these different calendars to confuse the issue. Verse 17, you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. In the first day, in the first month, actually it's mine has month in italics. It's in the first, on the 14th day of the month at even. You shall eat unleavened bread, and this is Be'erev. You shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month. So basically what you're doing is you're waiting until the 14th day when it comes to an end at even, which begins the 15th day of the moon. And so the 15th day is the memorial, because it was that night and the next day that he delivered Israel out of Egypt. Now, I know that that a lot of people might disagree with this, but brethren, you know, when is Ben Ha-Arabim? They were told to slaughter it at Ben Ha-Arabim.
Yeah. The 6th hour. I mean, 9th hour.
Yeah, right. Let's see here. Well, let's go to Leviticus chapter 23 first, before I get into explanation. Leviticus 23 and verse 4, these are the feast of Yahweh. Now, what he does is he goes through verse 1 through 3, he deals with the 7th day Sabbath. It is not linked to the moon at all, because it's a 7-day cycle continually. 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. 6 days you work, 7th day Shabbat. 6 days you work, 7th day Shabbat. And that's the way Yahweh drove that into Israel's mind when they were in the wilderness and they were gathering the manna, because they went out and gathered the manna 6 days. On the 6th day, they had twice as much for the 7th day Sabbath. And they didn't have any more for any other extra days that might come to pass, you know, at the end of some kind of stupid lunar cycle. Lunatic cycle. Sorry.
Those are those nowadays when they did meet, right?
Oh, yeah, those were fast days, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
I'm turning it off.
No, he drove it into their minds for 40 years. 40 years he drove this in their minds. So here we have in the moon, this is the in the month or in the moon, they Chodesh, Bachodesh. Rishon, the first. And that's exactly what this is saying here in verse 4. These are the feast of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month at even. And he says, then ha'arbaim at even is the Pesach, is the Passover to Yahweh. So when is Ben ha'arabim? Well, we're going to get a little lesson in this in just a minute. Let's just keep reading here for a moment. And on the 15th day of the same month, the same moon, the same Chodesh, is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. In the first day you shall have an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein, but you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh 7 days. In the 7th day is holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel. Well, we don't need to go into verse 9. We're just dealing with right now with the Passover. So let's go over here to Exodus 29. This is Exodus 29. If you can read Hebrew, you can read this here. Hold on, let me get my cheat sheet here. This is 29, Exodus 29 and verse 38. Now, what I want to lead up to you to here is Francis and I began to take lessons from Worldwide Church of God back in 1969, 1970. We were baptized by them in September of 70. And one of the things that they did is they took the little period of the time that the sun sets to nighttime, and they said, well, that's Ben ha'arabim. And so what they did is at the beginning of the 14th, they would observe the Passover, and then we'd go through all of Passover day. We'd take the bread, the cup, and the unleavened bread, and then all through the 14th day, since it's not a day of unleavened bread, we would still eat toast and everything. You know, we'd eat leavened bread. And then the 15th day, the next evening was the 15th day, and that was the night much to be remembered. And so we'd have a meal, not much to be remembered, unleavened bread and all that, with a good meal and all. And the next day was the first holy day. And so we would observe the holy day. And when we came into the assemblies, they basically observed it exactly the same way. And so there wasn't any problem until I was challenged, brethren. I was challenged to research into it because a lot of people were observing the Passover sacrifice to be in the afternoon of the 14th, and then they would partake of the Passover, the cup and the bread that evening. And I resisted it, and I resisted it, and I resisted it until finally I was told, well, why don't you study into it for yourself? And so I did. And when I came to Exodus chapter 29 in verse 38 and 39, I had to change. I had to change. It says, now this is that which you shall offer upon the altar, 2 lambs of the first year, day by day, continually. The one lamb, the echad, this is verse 39. This is what I just read. This is verse 38, but here is, this is the one, and this is the second. The one lamb, the first lamb, the one, ha-echad. Echad in Hebrew is one. So the one lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the English says the other, but the Hebrew is hashani, which means the second. And the second lamb you shall offer at even is what mine says, but the Hebrew is bin ha-arba'im. And when I looked at that, I got to thinking, well, now, wait a minute. The second lamb of the day is slaughtered at exactly the same time that the Passover lamb is slaughtered. Bin ha-arba'im. What in the world is going on here? Because what we were taught was the evening before sunset to nighttime was bin ha-arba'im. And that's when the lamb was slaughtered. But this is in the day. This is in the daytime. The first lamb is slaughtered in the morning. And the second lamb is slaughtered in Erev. And it's the second lamb of the day. Now, the sun is given to us, brethren, to rule the day. So I got this little chart made up here, and I don't know if you can see it all that well or not, but this is a circle right here representing the earth. And this is like the horizon going through the earth. This is the east, and this is the west. Now, this here is a line going through up and down, and this is, vertical, and this is horizontal. This is the horizon. This would be nighttime. Now, you can test this out yourself. But I guarantee you, before the sun reaches the horizon, it's ruling. It's ruling. You got plenty of light. You can see colors. You can see things perfectly before it even crosses the horizon. And it's the same in the evening. When it sets below the horizon, you can still see for about 18 to 25 minutes. It's still ruling. It just does not rule until 2 or 3 lights are seen in the sky. Now, that's according to the Jews to whom have been given the oracles of Yahweh. And basically, we'll probably go to Nehemiah in a little bit to look at that. But their work day was from the morning until the stars appeared. That was a work day for them when they were working on the temple. Okay, so you've got the Hebrew word for morning is boker. This is Beit Kof Resh. High noon is Zohar. This is high noon right here. All the time the sun leaves his house, he crosses the horizon. That's what the Kof there, the original Kof, was the sun sitting on the horizon. So the sun is beginning to leave its house. It's rising. And it crosses the horizon, and then it's looking this way for the apex, for Zohar. This is Boker, Beit Kof Resh, morning. So you can see he's left his house, he's leaving his house, he's rising, he crosses the horizon, and all this time it's morning. He's rising until he gets to the apex, and he's as high as he's going to go. That's Zohar. Then when he crosses this line here, he's in the western sky and he begins to go down. He begins to descend. And the Hebrew term for the west is Ma'erev. So this is the first Arab. In his eye, he's looking, and here's his head. The Arab is Ayin, Resh, Beit. So he's looking, his head is looking towards the house. Arab. So here is the first Arab, and here is the second Arab, the last Arab, Ben Ha-Arba'im. The middle, Bin means in between. So in between is right in here, the middle between the noon and the night is between. And that's when the lamb was slaughtered in the afternoon.
They have a good picture of that as a man is facing away from his house, going to work, and then in
Yeah,
the
he's
evening,
facing, yeah, because
and
his
then
face is
he's
pointed this
facing-
way.
facing going home.
This way he's
in the
facing back
afternoon.
down. Yeah, right. Right. Now I got this from Robert Kirk, by the way. Robert Kirk did some thinking on this while he was in prison, and he's the one who started looking into the pictorial Hebrew, and man, it just lit him up, you know. So here is Ben Ha-Arabim. Here is Zohar, high noon. Here's the 18 to 30 minutes before sunrise is the morning, is the sun's beginning to rule. And then this is the evening twilight. And then, so I've got Exodus 29, 38 through 41 here. Well, brethren, this is what I began to see, is that it had to have been slaughtered at mid-afternoon. Now, when it goes here, the sun, they didn't use a watch like we do. So we can get screwed up on trying to set times. What?
This is from Robert. Robert says the word Arev explains the position of the sun. The Ayin equals to see.
Yeah.
The Resh, the head of the man, the Bet, the house. When the sun is even with the top of the head, equals the first evening. When the sun sets behind the house, the second evening.
Mhm.
Messiah died between the evenings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we have is, let me get to this one right here. This is a little bit stretched out, but anyway, here's your circle here. This is mid-morning. This is the third hour. They use sundials. And so mid-morning was the third hour. High noon was the sixth hour. Mid-afternoon was Ben Ha-Arabim. That was the ninth hour. And then Yahshua, our Passover, died at what hour? The ninth hour. The ninth hour. Ben Ha-Arabim. He died exactly at the time he was put on that tree, at the time of the morning sacrifice. And he died at the time of the evening sacrifice. And from noon, high noon, the sixth hour, until the ninth hour, there was darkness over the land. So the moon and month in Hebrew is Chodesh. It just means a lunation. It means a month. There's two Hebrew words for the moon. Another one is Yarech, and Yarech means the moon, the body of the moon. It's kind of like us. We call the moon, and then we have lunar. You know, two different words. Put that up. Okay, so there's got to be 2 or 3 witnesses. Let's go over here to, let me see how far I'm going to go here. We got to have 2 or 3 witnesses in order to establish a thing. Let's go over to Deuteronomy chapter 17. Deuteronomy 17 and verse 6. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall he that is worthy of death be put to death, but at the mouth of 1 witness he shall not be put to death. So, okay, this is talking about killing somebody. Let's look at chapter 19, verse 15. 1 witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin in any sin that he sins. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. Let's go to Matthew chapter 18, because this is what Yahshua says. Matthew 18 and verse 16. Let's just pick it up in verse 17. Moreover, if your brother shall trespass against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. And if he shall hear you, you've gained your brother. But if he will not hear you, then take with you 1 or more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. Let's go to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 13. Verse 1, this is the 3rd time I'm coming to you. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established. 1 Timothy 5. I just want to make sure that we know what's going on here. 1 Timothy 5:19. Against an elder receive not an accusation, but before 2 or 3 witnesses, them that sin rebuke before all, that others may fear. Let's go to John chapter 8. Verse 17, it is also written in your law that the testimony of 2 men is true. I am one that bears witness of myself, and the Father that sent me bears witness of me. What I want to do is show you that Yahweh's word is established on at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, or a thing is established at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Hebrews 28 is the last place I want to look to establish this. I'm sorry, Hebrews 10. There is no Hebrews 28.
Oh, I was going to say, you had that.
10:28. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Okay. So let's go back to Exodus chapter 13. Exodus 13, verse 1, Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whosoever opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and beast, it is mine. And Moses said to the people, remember this day when you came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand Yahweh brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came you out in the Chodesh month, moon, Aviv. Whoa, in the moon, Aviv. Okay, let's go to, what is Aviv? Aviv From Strong's Concordance, it says that it's from an unused root, meaning to be tender, green. That, for example, a young ear of grain, hence the name of the month Aviv or Abib or Nisan. New Brown Drivers Briggs, Gesenius Hebrew English Lexicon says, number one, fresh young ears of barley. And number two, Chodesh, the month of ear forming or of growing green. And then they've got several different scriptures that you could go to there. But the Chumash, I went into the Chumash, which is rabbinic commentary on Exodus 13, verse 4. And it says, the very timing of the Exodus demonstrates Elohim's love of Israel. He freed us in a month when the weather is pleasant, not rainy or hot. This is from Rashi. And when the newly blossoming vegetation symbolizes rebirth. Think about that. The newly blossoming vegetation, newly blossoming. What have we got going on around us now?
Oh, it's all over.
Newly blossoming vegetation, symbolizing rebirth. Symbolizing rebirth. Let's go to Exodus chapter 23. And verse 15. Oh, I'm in the wrong chapter yet. Won't get there this way. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. This is Hag HaMatzot, or Matzot. The feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread 7 days as I commanded you in the time appointed of the month Aviv. Aviv or Aviv. The green blossoms, the blossoming, the green ears. For in it you came out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. So what we got here? We got two witnesses, right? Exodus 34. The feast of unleavened bread shall you keep. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. This is verse 18, Exodus 34, 18. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread as I commanded you in the time of the month Aviv. Aviv. For in the month Aviv or Aviv, you came out from Egypt. Aviv or Aviv. It's basically the same thing. It has to do with green ears. So that's 3 times that he tells them. But let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. Observe the month of Aviv. Aviv or Aviv, the month of green ears, and keep the Pesach, the Passover, unto Yahweh your Elohim. For in the month of Aviv, Yahweh your Elohim brought you forth out of Egypt by night. How many more witnesses do you need? I gave you 4.
One more work.
Huh?
One more work.
One more will work?
Yeah.
I don't have it on me. Okay, so let's go back to 23. Leviticus chapter 23. These are the feasts, verse 4, of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons, in the 14th day of the first moon. The first moon, the first Chodesh, the Rishon, the Rosh or Rishon, at even Bin HaErabim is Yahweh's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. That's the reason why, brethren, you have it from the 15th to the 21st. Because they killed the lamb in the afternoon of the 14th, they had to prepare it that night. Well, after the sun goes down and you got darkness comes, well, that's the 15th. So they ate it that night in the 15th, And then at midnight, Yahweh slew the children of Israel, and he passed over the children of Israel. But he says, memorialize this day. Memorialize the first day. The 15th day, I'm sorry. Memorialize the 15th day, not the 14th. The 14th was preparation day. It was used to prepare the people for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. They took all their leaven and burned it, cast it out and burn it. There had to be no leaven in their land. So basically the way to destroy it is to burn it. And so they burned it, and then they fixed unleavened bread, and they slew the Passover. So that night on the 15th, they began the days of unleavened bread. It's basically simple. It's just that the problem is people haven't been able to see it clearly. Now, there's, as far as this Zadok Enochian calendar, you know, in a lunar year, there's 354 days compared to 365 in a solar year. Well, the interesting thing is that there were 12 tribes of Israel, and 12 is an important number with Yahweh. There were 12 stones on the priest's breastplate, right? There was 12 loaves of showbread on the table of showbread. There's 12 months in a year. Even on Caesar's calendar, there's 12 months. Even on this calendar here, there's 12 months. But Yahweh he teaches me out of the Torah that he uses the moon, a lunar calendar, not a solar calendar. Now, if you want to go with something like this, go. But that's not what Yahweh assigned. He assigned lunar months. Now, there's a reason. There's 12 months in the year. There's 12 signs of the Mazzaroth, right? Zodiac, Mazzaroth. Each tribe, brethren, there was 12 tribes, and each tribe out of a year had their month to provide for the tabernacle and the temple sacrifices. Every third year, because you got 354 days in a lunar year compared to 365. So every 3 years, a month had to be added to bring them back together again. So they had to add another 30-day month to the calendar so that it would get back into sequence with the 365 solar year. But it worked out perfectly. Now, the interesting thing about this is every third year there had to be a 13th month added to bring everything back into harmony. But the 13th month, the third year, the 13th month belonged to the Levites. They had to provide for the sacrifices. Well, the problem is they had no inheritance. They didn't have an inheritance like the Israelites, the other tribes of Israel did. Yahweh was their inheritance. And brethren, that's what I want. I want Yahweh to be my inheritance. I don't care. You can be a priest of Zadok. You can be a priest of Levi. You can be one of these other priests or whatever. But I want to be a priest after the order of Melchizedek, because that's the eternal priesthood. The Zadok is not the eternal priesthood. There will be a Zadok priesthood in the millennium, but that's only going to be for a short period of time, 1,000 years, and it's over with. The Melchizedek priesthood is eternal. So the Levites had no inheritance. Let's go to Numbers chapter 18. Numbers 18 and verse 20. And Yahweh spoke to Aaron, you shall have no inheritance in their land, neither shall you have any part among them. I am your part and your inheritance among the children of Israel. And let's just keep reading here, down to verse 23. And behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tenth of Israel for an inheritance for their service, which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Neither must the children of Israel henceforth come nigh the tabernacle of the congregation, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levites shall do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that among the children of Israel they have no inheritance. But the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as an heave offering unto Yahweh, I have given to the Levites to inherit. Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel they shall have no inheritance. Now, brethren, Yahweh told them that it was going to be a land of flowing with milk and honey, right? And when I looked it up in the interlinear this morning, it said gushes. It gushes, just gushes with milk and honey. I mean, that land had to have been so productive. I mean, it had to have been some kind of awesome. Let's go to Numbers 26. And verse 62. Okay, let's pick it up. Verse 60. And unto Aaron was born Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. And Nadab and Abihu died when they offered strange fire before Yahweh. And those that were numbered of them were 20 and 3,000, all males from a month old and upward. For they were not numbered among the children of Israel, because there was no inheritance given them among the children of Israel. And Deuteronomy chapter 18. And verse 2. Let's just pick it up in verse 1. The priests, the Levites, and all of the tribe of Levi shall have no part nor inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the offerings of Yahweh made by fire, and his inheritance. Therefore shall they have no inheritance among their brethren. Yahweh is their inheritance, as he has said unto them. But they had to provide sacrifices in the year that there was a 13th month. So what happened? Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 14. Deuteronomy 14 and verse 28. At the end of 3 years, you shall bring forth the tithe of your increase the same year, and shall lay it up within your gates. And the Levite, because he has no part nor inheritance with you, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, which are within your gates, shall come and shall eat and be satisfied, that Yahweh your Elohim may bless you in all the work of your hand which you do. So he set a year, a third year, for all the children of Israel to set aside a special tithe for the Levites and for the widows and so forth, so that they would have enough sustenance to provide for not only themselves throughout for basically 3 years, but also to provide for the tabernacle, the sacrifices of the tabernacle and the temple. Let's go to Deuteronomy 26. Verse 12, when you have made an end of tithing, all the tithes of your increase, the third year, which is the year of that tithe, the third year is the year of that tithe. They had to set aside for the tribe of Levi, because they had no inheritance in Israel. They had to have a special tithe for them so that they would have not only the ability to provide for the 13th month sacrifices and offerings, but for themselves for basically 3 years. So, you know, brethren, I mean, that's, to me, that's just proof that Yahweh used the lunar calendar, and every 3 years he added an extra month, which that month was for Levi. The other 12 months, all the children of Israel, each tribe had their month where they provided every year. But every third year, that 13th month, that had to be added in order to bring everything together, recombine the solar and the lunar together, they had to do a special tithe so that the Levites would be provided for. Now, this Zadok calendar, let's see where my stuff is here. Here it is. The Zadok calendar also has, they say there's a checksum. A checksum. And here's what they say. It cannot be understood that this checksum test prescribed in 4Q 329 is the true test of the ancient calendar for every successive year. If a calendar schedule does not live up to this test on year, then by Zadok testimony, the calendar is not the ancient biblical calendar. That is, getting a match periodically over the years or by catch is inadequate, and a single failure would indicate the calendar being tested is not in accord with the priestly calendar. For those who do not have access to the text of 4Q 329a, it is presented below. Now, let me ask you, is 4Q 329a a part of the scriptures? Not the ones I have. But let me just read the summary here. In summary, the checksum test in 4Q 329a is that it defines the mathematical time relationship between the instance of the day of the weekly Sabbath and the instance of the day of Passover. On the authentic priestly calendar, the Passover must occur on the third day after the weekly Sabbath in each and every biblical year. Must occur on the third day of the week on each and every biblical calendar year. Well, that's interesting. That's very interesting, brethren. And the reason why I say that's interesting is let's go to John chapter 19. It doesn't line up with what happened with Joshua. In this case, Joshua would have had to die on the third day of the week, which would be what we call today, and I hate to use the term, but it's Tuesday, instead of the middle of the week, the fourth day of the week, which we call Wednesday now. Okay? John 19. John 19:31. This is after Joshua bowed his head and he gave up the spirit. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day. And now this Sabbath day that he's talking about here is not the seventh day Sabbath. It was the high day. It was the first day of unleavened bread, the 15th day of the month, because Yahshua died on Passover day, the 14th. For that Sabbath day was in high day. What do you mean by that? That's an annual high day. Besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. Okay, let's go to Luke chapter 23. Verse 50. And behold, there was a man named Joseph, a counselor, and he was a good man and just. The same had not consented to the counsel and deed of them. He was of Arimathea, a city of the Jews, who also himself waited for the kingdom of Elohim. This man went unto Pilate and begged the body of Yahshua, and he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. I think that's important. It wasn't a corrupted place where another dead person had been. And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. The Sabbath was beginning. And the women also which came with him from Galilee followed after and beheld the sepulchre and how his body was laid. Mark 16. Now, brethren, what you have to do is you have to put these scriptures together in order to get the general idea. And when the Sabbath was passed, this is Mark 16, verse 1, Miriam Magdalene, and this is the Sabbath. This is the high day. It's not the seventh-day Sabbath. It's the high day, brethren. So when the high day was passed, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, they went and bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. They couldn't buy them the day before because it was a Sabbath. Everything was shutting down. From noon onward, everything would have been shut down. They wouldn't have been able to go to a market or anything because everyone was preparing for the Passover and the first day of unleavened bread, the high Sabbath, the high day. They bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. Okay. Now let's go back to Luke 23. You have to put these things together. Verse 56, and they returned and prepared spices and ointments. They saw where he laid, but that was the high Sabbath was drawing on, so they're not going to go back and they're not going to prepare spices and ointments. They're not going to go and purchase spices and ointments because everything's shut down. They went the next day after the Sabbath was passed. They went and they bought the spices and the ointments and they prepared them. And then it says, and rested the Sabbath day, the seventh-day Sabbath, according to the commandment. So he died on what we call a Wednesday. He was buried at the very evening, just before the high day. The Thursday was the high day. It was the high day. It was the first day of unleavened bread. So he was in the grave from that night through that day, and then the next night and day, and then the next night and day, which was the Sabbath, and he was resurrected at the end of the Sabbath. Huh? No Good Friday.
But he did that on a Wednesday, because you were confusing me a while ago. You said a Tuesday.
No, I said according to their calendar, he had to have died. He would have had to die on a Tuesday.
He resurrected on a Saturday?
Sabbath evening, just before he was actually resurrected. He died on the afternoon of the 14th. He was buried as the day was drawing to an end. The 15th day of the month was the 5th day of the week. the first day of unleavened bread, there was no work. The 16th day of the month was the 6th day of the week.
What you call Friday.
That was what we call Friday. You could work and prepare. So they bought and worked and prepared the spices. And then they rested because the 17th day of the moon was the 7th-day Sabbath. No work, rest. And so that's the reason why they went the next morning on the first day of the week.
So let me ask you a question. So he died the evening of, say,
Wednesday,
no, not died, but resurrected the evening of
Sabbath.
so
Saturday, Friday, right at Friday evening.
No,
Saturday
evening.
evening.
Sabbath evening.
Just before, at the time in between the Sabbath and the first day of the week. Because he was in the grave 3 days and 3 nights, or 3
Right.
nights and 3 days.
So he
We
died.
Christians believe he was resurrected on Sunday
I know.
because he was already gone.
He was already
He was
gone.
gone.
Yeah.
He was
So
the
we-
Omar.
That's what the angel
he was the
told
Omar
Miriam
Rashid.
when she went in there. He says, he's gone, you know.
So we keep it sunset
He-
to sunset.
So that's what I've always thought.
He was the Omar Rashid. So when he
Yeah.
went over there, she's supposed to be in the garden, the gardener.
'Cause he
This
got-
is early Sunday morning,
Yeah,
what
she
they call
was, yeah.
Sunday morning. He was
Early
the way
morning,
she
first day of the
called.
week.
So he,
In other words,
72 hours from Wednesday, Ben Ha-Arabim to Sabbath.
Not Ben Ha-Arabim, it's Arab.
Arab
Why don't you let
there
Jerry explain?
is
so he
all
came
3
out of the
days and
grave
3
at
nights. I was
the
doing
end
real
of the
good.
Sabbath. In other words, the Sabbath was changing into.
First day of the week,
First day
right
of
in
the week.
between that period of time. Yeah,
so
he
it
was
still
resurrected
on-
and came
it was
out.
Still on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
So these people,
17th day.
these people that keep Sunday saying that that's Easter. That's
Oh,
when
it's
you
false.
rose.
It's false.
It's false.
Because he couldn't have died on Friday afternoon, be in the grave from Friday afternoon, or Friday evening, actually, through the 7th-day Sabbath, because that evening was that, we call it Friday evening, but that was the Sabbath evening. So he would have been, according to their reasoning, he died Friday afternoon. He was buried just before the Sabbath, and he was in the grave all of the Sabbath that night and the next day. And then the next night, that's a day and a half, and was resurrected the next morning. That's half the time.
So the people that keep Easter saying he arose on Sunday, they're out of context with the scripture.
Oh, absolutely.
They took that verse where Miriam went early the first day of the week. They're
Yeah.
taking that one and saying, oh, that's when he
Yeah, that's when he was resurrected.
And so we
He was
changed
already
the Sabbath.
gone.
Yeah,
to
he was
Sunday.
already
Common
gone.
sense. Even a kindergartner can tell you that you can't get 72 hours on a Friday to Sunday.
That's right.
You know? And then you start really looking into the paganism
The
and
star.
everything, story of the
Ishtar,
Easter bunny
Isis,
and why they
all that.
Right.
Okay,
Easter bunnies
so
don't have eggs and all that.
on the Zadok calendar, making the 3rd day of the week, the 14th day of Passover, the 4th day would have been the first day of unleavened bread, which would have been Wednesday. And the 5th day would have been a work day, which was Thursday. And the 6th day would have been a work day, which is Friday. And he would have been resurrected Friday in the evening. And then he'd had all day Sabbath knocking around. But I mean,
The beginning of
you know, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the narrative that you find here in the scriptures, because he was being buried just before the high day began, and then at the end of the high day, well, they went and bought spices and everything and prepared them, and then they rested on the Sabbath, and then they were coming on the morning of the first day of the week to anoint his body, and he wasn't there. He had already been resurrected.
Right.
So the Zadok calendar doesn't fit the bill, y'all. The Zadok calendar is not correct. Not according to the scriptures that we have here. Not according to Yahshua's death, his burial, and his resurrection. It is not correct. Now, if you want to go that way, you know, go.
They
Go. But it's not correct. If you want to walk in the truth, then you need to walk in the truth.
What I was wanting to say was, so many people have been deceived.
Revelation 12:9.
Yeah. If they believe in the scripture and believe in Yahweh and believe in Yahshua, as they claim, then they would keep the right days.
Yeah, but they're deceived. They
They would
think
keep the
they're
Sabbath.
deceived to think that, the ones who are leading them and teaching them are the ones who are going to suffer for that. Did you have a question or comment?
So basically, let's take Yeshua's death as in it happened this Wednesday that just passed. So today is Saturday. So
Right.
before this evening, he would have resurrected.
Yeah, just
Because
right
the
at
evening
the
starts Sunday.
yeah, just
today.
before the first day of the week, he would have resurrected.
I hate it when
Right.
I'm not condemning other religions. That's what it is, religion. I hate it when they tell me, I know scripture. I said, yeah, you can read it word for word and everything else.
But that's why
But
it says it's line upon line, precept upon precept,
right.
here a little, there a little.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've been showing my husband that lately, that in order to get the whole story of the whole scriptures, you can't just read from front to back like we're doing right now.
Right.
We'll do that first, but then we'll go back and we'll start doing a lot of studying.
I tell them,
different
the
scriptures.
you can speak the scripture pretty good,
By the way-
word for word. You know it, but you don't live it. You don't live what you believe. So you're just blowing
You're a
smoke.
hypocrite if you don't live what you believe.
Okay, brethren, let's get our hymn notes, and this is all I have for the message
All right.
today, brethren. I hope this has been a learning experience for you. If you have any questions or any comments, you can call me, you can write to me, you can study and prove me wrong. You're welcome to try to do that. But I can tell you this right now, the Zadok calendar does not add up to the events that took place. And it does not add up to the calendar that Yahweh gave to us here in the Torah. Here in the Torah.
Yeah.
So we're going to sing song number 6, Be Still and Know That I Am. And then we'll call Jerry up to close with prayer and bless the food. I got your book. Everybody ready? Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am. Yahweh Elohim. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am. Yahweh Elohim. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Be still and know that I am.
I sang the choir.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. Heavenly Father, in Yeshua's mighty and awesome name, we ask and we pray. We thank you, my Father, for letting us gather here again today, because one of these days, my Father, when it all comes, that we will be persecuted for the name of Yeshua HaMashiach and our faith and our way of life.
Yes.
And as a witness to these people, my Father. We don't look forward to that day, but it's going to get here. My Father, we thank you for the message today to straighten up the calendar a little bit for people that didn't understand, that they may understand now, to open their ears and their eyes to know that your word is faithful and true and will always be that way.
Hallelujah.
Not one word has ever fallen or even come to an end of what you have said. And we thank you for that, because it gives us the straight and narrow path to walk so that we don't go off into the other path, my Father, that the majority of mankind is following. We thank you, my Father, for the food that we're about to receive. We thank you for blessing this food for the nourishment of our bodies, my Father, because you gave us that food. For everything upon this earth belongs to you. It don't belong to us. We just use it, my Father, at your discretion. And we thank you for that. And we ask all these things in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our great high priest, after the order of Melchizedek. Thank you, my Father. In his name we pray. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
The name of
It's not
Yeshua.
food, it's not warm, so it's
What?
gonna be a while.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
starve
gonna be a
to
while.
death.
There's something wrong with your stove?